Is there anything better than football on Thanksgiving? Welcome to the special Thanksgiving edition of our Thursday football breakdown. If you're new here, my name is Max. I do these every single week for Thursday night football, even though we're doing all three games in this one episode, as well as big games on Sunday and Monday night football. So if you are new, you like this type of stuff, make sure you subscribe below. If you haven't liked the video, make sure you like it. It lets me know you enjoy this type of content. But like I said, we're going to go through every single Thanksgiving Day game. It's going to be an unbelievable day. We're going to start with the Bears at the Lions. And before we do any breakdown for any game, there will be timestamps below if you just want to watch one game. I suggest you look at all three. Going to help your fantasy teams, going to help your higher or lower projections, but there will be timestamps below if you just want to look at one game. Before we talk Bears Lions, we need to talk data outliers from the last 5 games. Looking at the Chicago Bears defense to start, the 5th most pass yards overall allowed the last 5 games, the most rush yards to running back specifically allowed over the past 5 games, 10th most receiving yards to opposing running backs over the last 5 games. If I told you just those 3 stats, I think you'd know which Lions player we like the most. We'll talk a little bit about it. But additionally, the 4th most receiving yards to tight ends. We saw TJ Hawkinson have a pretty solid game last week. They're going to do their best to eliminate number one, let everybody else beat you. I could see a Sam Laporta game. On the other side, there's really only one outlier with the Detroit Lions. 10th most overall wide receiver yards allowed. Now, we'll look at the target rates. We'll look at which types of receivers have had better games against the Lions as we break this stuff down. But those are the data outliers for that first Bears-Lions game. Without further ado, though, let's get into the data. We're going to start with a coverage matrix. If you guys have never seen a coverage matrix before, it essentially outlines how often a team plays a certain type of coverage. And you can see right here, the Detroit Lions are the most man-heavy team in the entire NFL. So we're going to immediately pivot to the Chicago Bears wide receivers. So what we do now, we go look to see which Bears wide receivers are, one, getting the most targets against man, but two, have the most yards per route run against man. Because if we're going to look at yardage projections, we want to see the yards per route run. Now, it is important to understand that they did switch offensive coordinators. There was an overall philosophy change in Chicago, absolutely. But when you're playing man coverage, certain players are always going to be better than others. So we're going to go take a look here on Pro Football Focus at the exact receiver production against man coverage and zone, but more importantly, man, because of how much man the Lions run. We're going to give this a second to load. But it is the biggest indicator. Every single time I see a top 10 man team, you look at which wide receivers are the best against man coverage. We will pull that up for you right now. You can see right here, man coverage. Overall, targets, Keenan Allen has the most targets against man coverage. Receptions, the most receptions against man coverage. Let's look at yards per route run and overall yards. Highest passer rating when targeted. Okay, Rome Odunze is a little bit higher. Where do we have the yards? We need the yards here. Yards. Did I just miss? Here we go. Okay. Overall yards, Keenan Allen a little bit less than Rome Odunze. Yards of reception, Keenan Allen's third. Interestingly enough, we got to look at where Chicago is throwing the football to Keenan Allen, because that is going to be the biggest indicator here. If I remember correctly, at the beginning of the year, and I haven't done a full breakdown on the Lions since, I believe, the Sunday night football game against the Houston Texans, they still are very high in terms of slot target percentage. I was right. Third highest slot target percentage in the NFL. Teams are throwing against them in the slot at a very high rate. But you look at the out wide target percentage too, 42.7. They're still pretty high, right? Tied for 8th, but it's more slot, at least comparatively, than it is out wide. So now what we do is we go take a look at the Chicago Bears for the entire season here. We'll go to entire season. What we're going to do is take a look at the Chicago Bears and see who's running routes from the slot. If you're going to get man coverage, are the Bears going to attack the slot a little bit more? If they do, who's getting the targets there? What percentage of overall snaps have a Keenan Allen slot route or a DJ Moore out wide route? That is what we need to look at. Now, very important to note, Detroit's secondary is banged up a little bit. Carlton Davis should be fine, but Terrion Arnold is banged up. Detroit's pass defense has, like I said, last 5 weeks, 10th most wide receiver yards specifically, has struggled a little bit. Even though they've been pretty good in the red zone, pretty good overall, their overall pass defense against wide receivers, yardage-wise, they've struggled a little bit, and that's the reality. So when we're looking at these Chicago Bears routes, pull this up for you guys real quick, we want to see, again, if Keenan Allen's getting the most targets, where is he running his routes from? That is the most important thing to look at here. And you could see the top of it, 29.7% of dropbacks, this is the highest on the team, have a Keenan Allen slot route. Yards per route run in the slot, 1.25. Targets per route run in the slot, 0.19. Interestingly enough, Keenan Allen is getting targeted more on the outside than he is in the slot. Now, I'm fascinated by DJ Moore here because past couple weeks, DJ Moore has been used more in the offense. Caleb Williams is taking his chances more with DJ Moore. He's got enough in the slot that makes me think, okay, 1.22 yards per route on a run in the slot. Maybe he is a viable lean. When we go look at the projections, which I'll show you guys how to get in a second here, you look at DJ Moore, his projection. Again, this is in a dome. Weather is really not a factor here. DJ Moore's projection is 54.5 yards. He's hit it in both games after the offensive coordinator change. Keenan Allen's projection is 47.5 yards. He's only hit it in one game after the offensive coordinator change. His reception projection, which we'd probably want to lean with Allen anyways, 4.5. 2 of the last 4, only 1 of the last 2 after the coordinator change. DJ Moore's reception projection, 4.5, hit it in both of the games since the offensive coordinator change. So if you're looking at projections, DJ Moore is probably your guy. But I will tell you before I say anything else about the projections, if you guys want a little bonus cash to make your projections with, you can click the link below. Sleeper is giving you a half-yard special on Thanksgiving. It's CeeDee Lamb to get at least half a yard. He's going to get at least half a yard. But they're giving you special discounts. So depending on when you're seeing this, if you're seeing this on Wednesday, they're giving you a Wednesday discount. They're giving you a Friday discount. Friday profit boost. Saturday discount, Sunday discount, Monday discount. You just have to join with code LEADS, LEADS. Click the link there. They'll match your first deposit up to $1,500 too. If you're already on Sleeper, you still want some free cash to make your picks with. If you're not an Underdog and Better, they will both give you a free pick for Thanksgiving as well as deposit bonus on Underdog and a deposit match on Better. Again, the link for that is in the description below, so check that out if you haven't already. But when we look specifically at the Lions, we look specifically at what they do coverage-wise. A lot of man. DJ Moore has been the guy against man. We got to lean DJ Moore more than Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, no pun intended. Let's talk the other side, though, because like I mentioned at the beginning, Bears just overall have struggled recently defensively. They've struggled overall. Now, this to me is a game where the Lions should have a decent grasp. The game flow should play in their favor, and David Montgomery is questionable. So that, plus the fact that they've given up the most rushing yards to opposing running backs the last 5 weeks, plus the 10th most receiving yards to opposing running backs the last 5 weeks. Who do you think we're leaning? Who do you think we're going to talk about here? It's Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I do want to go look at the target percentages because it is very important to note that anytime you pull up a target percentage or want to look at a projection for a running back, you need to make sure they're being targeted in their own offense a good amount and the opposing defense is allowing those targets. Now, from what I understand, just looking at the raw numbers, if you're giving up the 10th most receiving yards to opposing running backs the last 5 weeks, you're probably being targeted out of the backfield a little bit. But I do want to make sure we check with the Chicago Bears defense. So when you look at the opposing back target, Chicago Bears, see, I think they're not towards the top, which is very interesting. They're actually bottom 10 in opposing target percentage to opposing running backs. So to me, even though 10th most receiving yards to opposing running backs the last 5 weeks, the fact that they're not really being targeted there is a big red flag for me. Detroit would have to be then targeting running backs overall at a very, very high rate. And they could be. Jahmyr Gibbs is a dynamic player. They want to find ways to get him the ball. But as we look at that, we also need to look at the screen target percentage. So overall running back target percentage, the Detroit Lions, okay, so they're top 5, right? They're throwing to running backs a good amount. 18.2% of the opposing passes, or their passes, are going to running backs. Let's check out the design percentage, the screen percentage, though. Detroit Lions are, again, top 10, so 13.5%. Now, we also do have to go look at, again, the screen percentages for the opposing defense. So when you look at the design percentages for opposing defense, Chicago Bears are getting screened/designed at, scroll down to the Bears, don't see them at the top. Okay, so the 13th fewest. So not a ton of opposing screens or opposing passes are designed to go against the Chicago Bears, at least with the opponents they've been playing. Let's go back to the coverage matrix. Chicago Bears, in terms of man coverage, not at the top. In terms of zone coverage, 9th most zone, and there really is no tip in what kind of zone they do. You look at their overall zone numbers. A lot of cover 3, but most zone heavy teams will play cover 3, a good amount of cover 4, not a ton of cover 2. So more middle field close stuff than you would expect. So they are 59.2% middle of the field closed. So there you go. They are running middle field close coverages, so cover 1, cover 3, at the 5th highest rate in the NFL. So now we go to look at the Detroit Lions pass offense, what Jared Goff does against that middle field closed, how he does. So in terms of fantasy points per dropback, Jared Goff is the 6th best quarterback against those middle field zones. That's last 5 weeks. Let's make sure we go to overall. But my guess is it's not going to change too much. My guess is Jared Goff still does have a good amount of success against those middle field close coverages. 4th most, and he's actually faced those middle field close coverages at the highest rate. Teams play a lot of middle field closed against the Detroit Lions, probably because they want to stop the run. They want to load the box a little bit more. But if we're going to see more zone than man, we should get a beat on which Lions are better against zone. Let's look at wide receiver, tight end, and running back here too, because I don't want to leave out Laporta and leave out Gibbs. So if we're going to see more zone, the most zone-heavy targeted man, interesting, Amon-Ra St. Brown, then Jamison Williams. Okay, but let's look at target percentages because wide receivers are going to get more targets in general. Look at that. Amon-Ra St. Brown at the top, but Montgomery and Gibbs right there. The running back targets against zone, very, very high. Let's look at receptions. Even the targets pointing towards receivers other than other guys. Jahmyr Gibbs, 2nd in receptions. David Montgomery, 4th in receptions. Granted, Laporte has missed a little time, so that is important to understand. But yards per route run against zone. Look at this. David Montgomery has the most yards per route run against zone. A lot of yak. You kind of figured that. Interesting that Jahmyr Gibbs does not have a ton of yards per route run against zone, but he's also running just a lot of routes in general. And then let's check out the overall yards. Jahmyr Gibbs only 168. So interesting. Montgomery has more yards receiving against zone than Gibbs does. More yards per reception against zone than Gibbs does, which is very, very interesting. So originally I was thinking, okay, if it's going to be a game where the Bears have struggled against the run and can't really stop receivers or running backs out of the backfield catching the pass, it'd be Gibbs scrimmage yards, which still is solid. Like I look at Gibbs scrimmage yards right now. It is a projection of, I think it was 93 or something, 98.5. But the reality is he's hit it in 3 straight games. And David Montgomery is questionable. Now, I think he's going to play, but if that means any type of limitation on him, it's important to understand that. Jahmyr Gibbs, 98.5 scrimmage yards, to me is a little bit too low. But I look at Montgomery. Montgomery receiving yards, it's only 11.5. He has had 20-plus in 4 straight games, guys. 20-plus in 4 straight games. Now, let me look at the overall receiving numbers. He's hit 11.5 in all but 3 games. He's had 3+ catches in more games than not. And again, this is a very zone-heavy team. And you look at the numbers against zone for David Montgomery, he is the main guy. Now, in terms of overall targets for the wide receivers against Chicago Bears, they're pretty good. They're pretty good against wide receivers overall. But we should check out where they are being targeted before anything else. Because if we look at Amon-Ra St. Brown and he's that good in the slot, we should check to see if the Bears are being targeted in the slot at a high rate. Not really. They're being targeted out wide at 40.8%, which is interesting because they have Jalen Johnson out there. They're pretty balanced in terms of where they're targeted. That's the reality. Inline's probably a little bit higher, actually. Okay, inline. There you go. 2nd highest rate in the NFL. Now, truthfully, Laporta's zone numbers don't impress me enough to think, okay, he's going to have a big game. But looking at his projections right now, he got 3.5 receptions. He hasn't hit it in 3 weeks. Might mean he's due. But then you got receiving yards, 38.5. He's 2 for 4 in the last 4 games. Like, the pass production isn't there enough for me to believe in Laporta in terms of overall projections, but the matchup really doesn't get better. And I think we should look at the run data here too, because we talk about how bad the Bears have been against the run, especially recently. Let's look at overall rush yards per game. Chicago Bears. Okay, so they are 10th most rush yards per game, so not good. Yards per carry, 6th most yards per carry. I want to see, though, now, is there an area where they are worse in, like significantly worse in the run? So let's look at Chicago Bears. 4.44 yards per carry against zone, which is 11th most. And then they're facing a lot more man gap, and they are allowing 5.06 yards per carry. Okay, so they are worse against man gap, and they faced more man gap, which makes me think the numbers are a little bit stronger than they are. Let's look at the Lions, though. Are the Lions running a certain amount of rushes more than the other type? Let's see, like man gap, Detroit. Wow. Detroit's only run 115 man gap runs, but 201 zone schemed runs. And look at that, yards per carry. 5.36 yards per carry. 5.36 yards per carry. Now, what we should do now, we'll finish up with this, is look at the data for which running backs are better in zone or running more zone for the Lions. Sometimes when you have different running backs with different skill sets like the Lions have, you use other running backs or certain running backs in different situations. So if we go to the Lions here, is Gibbs running more zone? Is Montgomery? Is there a big difference? There's no difference. You got Montgomery with 2 more zone carries in 11 games, and then Gibbs with, 11 more man gap. Okay, so, since the Bears are worse against man gap, Gibbs is running a little more man gap. He's still going to get his zone touches. I do think you lean Gibbs scrimmage yards just overall because the Bears are giving up a lot of receiving yards to opposing running backs. You look at the most rush yards to opposing running backs. I think Gibbs could have his scrimmage yard total just on the ground, but he's going to get plenty of opportunities through the air. I think that's the reality. So if I had to lean somebody, it'd be Gibbs with Montgomery questionable. If there's something comes out where it's like there's no limits on Montgomery, sure, lean Montgomery, especially scrimmage yards. But overall, I think Gibbs before Montgomery. But those two are at the forefront. And on the other side, I think it's DJ Moore. I still do. I think he's better against man. Lions have struggled against wide receivers, especially the last 5 weeks. So I think DJ Moore is the guy there. Let's move to the second game now. Giants, Cowboys. Data outliers before we get into anything. Giants, you guys don't need me to tell you they stink against the run, but last 5, 5th most rush yards to opposing running backs. We're going to look at Rico Dowdle. That's the biggest thing here. On the other side, Cowboys defense, and granted, there were a couple games, without Micah Parsons, but the Cowboys defense, 9th most overall pass yards, most quarterback rush yards, 7th most running back rush yards, 9th most wide receiver yards. Now, for me, the Giants won't have either their starting tackles, and I think they're going to be losing. So I'm not going to touch the rushing production. But passing, you saw what Malik Neighbors said in the presser. It sounds like it's going to be Drew Lock and not Tommy DeVito. Probably more inclined to throw the football down the field. I want to look at Malik Neighbors. I want to look at where the receiving production will come for the Giants, but I want to look at Malik Neighbors because I think his projection was around 50-something yards when I looked this morning. I think that is where some serious value could be. But before we do, let's check out the Dallas Cowboys rush attack versus the New York Giants rush defense. Before I do, though, guys, if you all want my picks and predictions for these games, remember they're all on X. There's also a link down there to my X. It's at Loeb's Leads, same handle. Make sure you're following over there. Again, all of that stuff, including some extra stuff like touchdown scores, first touchdown scores, like all that stuff is on there just so I can fire it off and get it to you right away. So if you want to see when I'm riding, make sure you do that. I'm trying to think we didn't hit last Thursday, but last Monday we had the Will Dissly first touchdown against Cincinnati. I know a lot of you guys rode that, love that. So make sure you don't miss any of that. That was last Sunday night against Cincinnati, right? Sunday night, regardless. Monday night, we had Joe Mixon, though, the weekend after. Regardless, make sure you guys follow so you don't miss any of that stuff. But let's look at the run data for the New York Giants because that's where we want to lean originally and initially. Whoa, I can't speak. Because they've been really bad. That's the reality. All year long, they've been really bad. 4th most rush yards per game, most rush yards per carry, highest explosive run. You know what's happening here. The Giants can't stop the run. That's the reality. But again, when you look at a bad run defense, you want to see, are they worse against a specific type of rush? Are they better against a specific type of rush? That is kind of the big tip here. The Giants, just generally speaking, are bad. What's good here, though, is they face an equal amount pretty much of zone and man gap. 4th most zone yards per carry, man gap. Also the 5th most. Tied for 4th. Okay, so they stink against both. That's the reality. So let's go look at Rico Dowdle. Let's look at the rush attempts in his game log as well, because it's really important to understand that you, as a running back, if you're looking at running back projections, want to lean on somebody who has the majority of their backfield, unless it's a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, because they're both going to get their touches. But like you look at Dowdle, no competition the past few weeks. He is the guy in the backfield. And he played a bad run defense last week, and he was able to produce in a close game. That is what I'm looking at. I think he's going to be able to produce in this game against the Giants. 19 for 86 last week. Again, I don't even know if we need to really look at Dowdle's numbers. We can just to see if he's better in any type of run. I mean, he's better in man gap, and they're running a little less man gap. I don't know if it makes a huge difference against that bad of a run defense, though. Maybe we check the explosive run percentage and the success rate. Success rate. Oh, okay. So Giants are a little bit better overall success rate against man gap. Zone, there, yeah, middle of the pack in success rate in both, but the reality is the Giants can't stop the run. And I'll go look at Rico Dowdle's projections for you right now. Again, on Sleeper. Make sure you guys join that if you haven't already. Rico Dowdle's projection, rush yards, 68.5. Like that, to me, that's just too little. That's too little. And last 4 games, he had 86 against Washington, bad run defense. Didn't play well against Houston. They got blown out. Game doesn't really matter, but that was also a tough defense. Philly got blown out, 53, tough run defense. Atlanta, 75, so above that 68.5 projection. Last time he played the Giants, only 11 carries, but that was with Dak. That was with a better Giants team. Still 4.18 yards per carry, and I think he gets more touches this week. Like, let's go look at that Giants game again, the overall game log. Like Zeke had 5, Hunter Lepke had 2. Dak ran the ball 2 times. How many did CeeDee Lamb have? I bet CeeDee Lamb had some carries that game. CeeDee Lamb carried the ball 3 times. Like, he's going to have more touches this time around against the Giants. And then another, I'm trying to think, Detroit, tough run defense, didn't play well. But the reality is, last 4 weeks, he's been playing 50% plus of snaps. Every time he's had that outside of that blowout against Houston, he's had a very good production overall rushing day. So he's going to be leaned on a little bit. 68.5 rush projection for Rico Dowdle is just too low. We can take a look at the target rates for receivers against the Giants. The reality is the Giants stink overall defensively. You probably don't need me to tell you that. But in terms of, target percentage, defensively, I mean, there's really nothing to write home about. Being targeted out of the backfield at a good amount. So, again, that'll lean into Rico Dowdle, but 13th most out wide. No Deonte Banks, which is interesting. So, if you want to lead into CeeDee Lamb a little bit, you can. I will take the game flow and the matchup more. But overall back target, like you look, 4th highest back target in the NFL. So, if you want to lean into Dowdle scrimmage yards, you can. I don't think you need to, but we need to look at the target rate for the Dallas Cowboys because, like I said, they're giving up the 9th most wide receiver yards. I don't think the Giants are going to have a lot of success in terms of running the ball. They're without either of their starting tackles. They're probably going to be losing. They're going to have to throw the football. Dallas Cowboys, you see here, being targeted at the 4th highest rate on the outside. Let's look at the coverage matrix for the Cowboys. Any specific type of coverage they play. So a little bit more, this is defense, a little bit more man-heavy than zone. So 13th most man, and then overall zone, 17th. So it's pretty balanced regardless, but the route participation, especially as it relates to the Giants and what they want to do is the most important thing. And you don't need me to tell you who's the main out wide guy on the Giants. Like, let's go to, wrong side. Team rate out wide, 40.3% of dropbacks have a Malik Neighbors route on the outside. And then he is being targeted 79 targets, 2.23 yards per route run on the outside, which is pretty big, 0.32 targets per route run. Interesting to note that Slayton is the second guy, and Slayton's had some success against the Cowboys, but Malik Neighbors is the guy. And again, it was a very similar situation with Tampa last week. They were a little bit more zone heavy, so we leaned catches, but we said Malik Neighbors, 6+ catches last week. He had that. This week, we look at Malik Neighbors' projections. I think because of the Cowboys playing more man and probably some garbage time stuff, you go yards. He's projected overall 64.5, which is too low. He's hit it in 2 of the last 4 games. But if you guys, like I said, go on to Sleeper, you have to join with code LEADS, LEADS. His receiving yard projection, I told you that special discount, you have to get on it today, Wednesday. 42.5 yards. You know how many times Malik Neighbors had 42.5 yards this year? all but one game. And that one game, he had 41. So get on this if you haven't already, but even the projection, if you're watching this on Thursday, of 64.5 yards from Malik Neighbors in a game where they're probably going to be trailing is a little bit too low. Again, there's no other real data outliers. I'm not going to lean into Drew Lock's passing yards, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lean into Drew Lock's passing yards. Get Malik Neighbors in your fantasy lineups. Again, you can look at the quarterback rushing yards. I don't love it. Dallas has not been great against the run, but a lot of those numbers are without Micah Parsons playing. That has a huge impact on the defensive line and the front seven overall. Micah Parsons is going to wreck the game, so if you want to throw Micah Parsons to have a sack in there, go ahead too. I like that a lot. Giants, again, without both their starting tackles, but it's Malik Neighbors receiving. I think it's just Rico Dowdle rushing. You can lean into CD if you want without Deonte Banks there, but I think Dowdle could have 100-plus yards on the ground. I think that's the reality, especially as the game flow goes, unless you guys think the Giants will walk into Dallas and beat them. I don't think they're going to keep it close either. Let's move to the final game, Miami, Green Bay. We started both of these breakdowns with data outliers. There's almost no data outliers here. Both these defenses are playing pretty well. The only two notes, last 5 games, the Dolphins are giving up the 4th most receiving yards to opposing running backs. So we want to look at who's running more routes out of the Packers' backfield, as well as their target percentage and most yards to opposing tight ends. They gave up big game to Brock Bowers, big play to Austin Hooper. They're giving up a good amount of receiving yards to opposing tight ends. Let's check out the target rate, their coverage matrix, the Packers' coverage matrix, because we got to look at Green Bay as a pretty solid defensive team, a tough team. They're going to punch you in the mouth through the air and on the ground, both sides of the ball. But there has to be some type of lean. Somewhere they're struggling or somewhere they allow more targets to go than others. Let's take a look at that, and let's look at how Tua does against that. Now, remember, guys, if you want my picks for this game, click the link in the description here. Follow my X, @Loeb's Lead, same handle. But if you also want to read a little bit about the whole Tua narrative, playing in the cold, go to my profile and check out my pinned tweet. I truthfully think that, let me pull this up for you guys. You can see there, right there, pinned tweet, and then my handle right there. I personally think the whole Tua can't play in the cold narrative is a little lame. I'm not a fan, to be fully honest with you. But let's check out some data for the Green Bay Packers and what they've been doing. Again, they're a very good team. They do a lot of different things defensively in terms of overall coverage. Not a huge outlier, but they play the 10th most zone in the league. And it's pretty balanced between middle field open and pretty balanced between middle field closed. You look at the overall zone percentages, 20.7% cover 2, over 20% combined of the quarters versions, quarter, half, or pure quarters, 30% cover 3, and then almost 25% man. They run an extremely balanced coverage matrix. On the other side, the Miami Dolphins, we'll pull that up too. They've been playing really good football lately. That's the reality. The Dolphins have been playing really, really good football lately. 9th highest middle field open coverages. So they'll run a lot of cover 2, but you look at the overall, where'd it go? The quarters world. So quarter, half, cover 6, or pure quarters, palms, 27.7% combined. Or sorry, that's the Falcons. Sorry. But almost 20% combined quarters world or quarter, half. They run a lot of middle field open. So we got to look at what Jordan Love does against zone. There's a lot of zone variations really on both sides. That is going to be the biggest tip in the pass game. But before we look at the pass game, we should at least do our due diligence with the run game. Both teams have been pretty solid against the run, but we should check out if there's some area of lean. You look at the rush yards per game, and again, none of them in the top 10, top 20. Packers, 19th most rush yards per game, and the Dolphins, 23rd most rush yards per game. So overall rush yards, not going to be there. Yards per carry, look at them right next to each other, 4.36. Packers giving up some more explosive runs, but I'm curious to see now, are either of these teams worse against a certain type of run? Well, okay, so Packers are a little worse against zone. I do know the Dolphins run a fair amount of zone, but it's not bad enough where you're like, okay, yeah, we got to lean into the Dolphins. No. 4.38 is the 14th most yards per carry against zone. Man gap, they're better, 17th. Miami against both of these. Where's the Dolphins at? Okay, so 12th most yards per carry against man gap, and then 3.8 yards per carry in zone. Are the Packers running any type of leaning any type of zone, man gap, anything. Not, you know what? No, they are. They're running a lot more zone. No, sorry, it's just Josh Jacobs getting the carries. And look at that. It's almost perfectly balanced in terms of how efficient he is, the success rate, the overall yards, the overall carries. So there's really no lean in the run game there. But Dolphins, again, nothing really. They're running more zone. They always do. Achane's equally as efficient in zone versus man gap, but both those run defenses are just too good for me to lean into either of them. So what we have to do now is go look at the coverage matrix. And again, we'll look at Green Bay first because there are two data outliers there. Dolphins receiving yards given up to running backs and Dolphins receiving yards given up to tight ends. We'll take a look at that. It's going to be really interesting to look at running backs because the target rate, let's look here, defensive target rate. You look at the Miami Dolphins, you see him right there, right? Nope. Where are they at? We missed them. Oh, here we go. The 19th highest target rate to opposing running backs. There's really no outlier here in terms of where targets are being allowed. Like even inline target rate, a little bit higher, yes. So 13.1, that's the sixth highest. Okay, so you do have to look at inline stuff. That could be Tucker Kraft. But even then, like it's not a crazy amount. Do you trust Tucker Kraft to get enough targets against a zone-heavy defense? Well, why don't we go look? Because he's had some good games, but he's been less involved recently. So Tucker Kraft, let's look at everybody against zone, but Tucker Kraft against zone is really where we're going to be looking here. Zone, yards per reception. Okay, there you go. So Tucker Kraft, 15.9 yards per reception. He has 3 touchdowns against zone. That's very interesting. Targets, look at this. 25 targets against zone, but target percentage only 12.5%. Look how low that is. Most targets against zone is Jaden Reed. Most receptions against zone, Jaden Reed. It's a lot of receivers against zone. But here you go. Josh Jacobs, 22 receptions against zone, 81.5 reception percentage. And target percentage for Jacobs, 20.3. Now, I want to go look and make sure that Josh Jacobs is still running the most routes from the backfield in the Packers because I know they use a lot of different things. They do a lot of different things. 62.1% of dropbacks will have a Josh Jacobs route out of the backfield, and only 22% will have an Emmanuel Wilson route. So you go look at Josh Jacobs, his projection in this game, receiving yards overall. It is receptions 2.5, which is pretty inconsistent, so I wouldn't lean into that. But receiving yards overall, 15.5. Interestingly enough, maybe it was because it was a blowout last week. He didn't have a catch last week, but 15.5, he's hit it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of, that would be 11 games. So not really, honestly, anything to lean into there. The only interesting thing is rushing and receiving because he's going to be a focal point in this offense. Anytime they've blown a team out, he's had a good game on the ground, even against Detroit, where that's a very good run defense. He wasn't like wildly efficient, or he wasn't wildly efficient going into that game. He was very efficient in that game. 95 rush yards. Like I look at his overall scrimmage yards projection of 92.5. That has hit regardless of matchup in 4 straight. And then if you go back, so it's hit in 4 straight, 5 of the last 6, and then overall, looks like 8 of 11 overall. So if I'm going to lead Josh Jacobs, he's going to get his carries. That's the reality. The Dolphins' run defense is very good, but the Packers have also been running the ball really well. You can lean into that a little bit more. Let's look at rush attempts overall, too, because that's another number you should look at when you're looking at overall rushing production. Because even if they aren't like wildly efficient on the ground, you're going against a good defense. If a team's going to ground and pound that much, you should at least lean into the rushing production a little bit. And look, Green Bay Packers, 6th most rushing attempts. And you look at their rush yards per game too. Like they can just run the ball. This is an unstoppable force, meaning an immovable object. I think you lean into Josh Jacobs. I think you just go scrimmage yards. There's nothing that points me in either direction that makes me think, okay, he's going to have 100 yards on the ground or he's going to have 40 yards through the air. But I think you could have a good game with both, and he's the focal point in both those offenses. Scrimmage yards for Jacobs, I think, is where you lean. Tucker Kraft, he's projected 30.5 receiving yards. Like, he had 0 yards against the Bears defense that was really bad against tight ends. That's what pushes me away. 78 against Jacksonville, 34 against Detroit, and then 26 against San Francisco, which, I mean, they were blowing him out. Like, they weren't going to throw the ball much. And then receptions, 3.5, just too much for me. I think if you wanted to lean into something with Kraft, it could be the receiving yards because, again, against zone, he's averaging what we say 16 yards per reception against zone. Like that's really, really good. And there's no reason that he should not at least get close to that on one catch. He should have a big catch, just a matter volume-wise. Is this game going to be close enough? I'm going to lean into Josh Jacobs, and I'm not going to do anything with Kraft. But we are not done here. We need to find somewhere to lean with the Dolphins offense because the target percentages, nothing really. Like, there's nothing super crazy. The Packers aren't allowing out wide targets, but slot targets, 37.1%, second highest in the NFL. I think we found it, guys. Second highest in the NFL. So now what we need to do, because we know the Packers play a lot of zone, and we know they're going to throw to the slot or allow more targets to the slot. Interestingly enough, back target too. Just outside the top 10, but not bad. We need to find who runs the slot routes for the Dolphins and who gets the most targets against zone. So let's go slot routes first. My guess is it's going to be mainly Tyreek Hill, but we can't discount it yet because Jonnu Smith's been running a lot of routes from the slot too. Look at that. There you go. Jonnu Smith. 20% of team dropbacks have a Jonnu Smith slot route. 19% of team dropbacks have a Tyreek Hill slot route. Interesting. Waddle had a good game last week. He's not running enough routes from the slot for me to look at that right now and say, we got to lean into him. He's just a little bit worse targets per out run, yards per out run than the other guys. We got to look at zone production, though, because Tua's going to throw the ball against zone. I know Devon Achane is the one against zone. That's the interesting thing here. Devon Achane is the guy against zone. Overall yards against zone, look at that. Jonnu Smith, Tyreek Hill. Targets against zone. Jonnu Smith, Tyreek Hill. Target percentage against zone. Jonnu Smith. Everything points Jonnu Smith. Everything points Jonnu Smith right now. Everything does. Now, it's interesting. We got to look at game logs against, see if there's any like crazy production from tight ends / slot guys, because there's some tight ends that are just pure inline, and there's some tight ends that are a hybrid of both, basically. Has there been enough? Like Kittle at 82. That's a hybrid guy. Laporte is not really a hybrid guy. Engram's a hybrid guy, so 36 and a touchdown. 36, not much. Schultz is not. McBride is a hybrid guy, 96. Not really anybody on the Rams. Minnesota, no Hawkinson. I don't want to look at that. Nobody on the Titans. Nobody on the Colts. They've played two stellar hybrid guys, 96 and 82 guys. I think you lean into Jonnu Smith. I think you lean into Jonnu Smith a little bit, especially because how much zone they're going to play. Probably would go catches before yards, but let's look at the overall projections. So 4.5 catches. He's had that in 3 of the last 4 overall receptions. He's had it in 4 of the last 6, and then 6 of 11. So not much. I don't love it. Yards projected 46.5. Had it in 2 straight. Here's the thing, though. The other 2 where he didn't have it, he had 46 and 45. He's had 62 and 96 against similar defensive schemes. Jonnu Smith has to be the guy. That's the reality. He has to be the guy. It's just a matter of catches or yards. Look, I don't know. We should look at pass attempts overall, too. That's a very important thing here. Advanced passing. Let's go offense. I got to see how much the Dolphins are throwing the ball, how many passes the Packers are allowing, because that is going to be what decides whether it's receptions or yards. But Jonnu Smith is the guy. Most targets against zone, most yards against zone. So dropbacks, we should look with Tua also. That's very important here. Should look with Tua. Arizona games week 8. Okay. With Tua, Miami Dolphins, there you go. 8th most dropbacks. They're throwing the ball a lot. Or 8th most attempts, dropbacks. Well, they're just throwing on every dropback. That's the... Okay. And then we can go to defensively. Pass attempts. Green Bay, are you allowing a lot of pass attempts? Not really. Not really. Are they allowing a lot of run attempts? That's the interest. That's the other part of this. Are they allowing a lot of rush attempts? I don't really know if they are. Green Bay. Not really. Okay, so it's more of a time of possession thing. So I think you go Jonnu Smith, 5+ catches. He's been really good the past few weeks. The only thing that I really do worry about is the explosive playability. Look, I think if he gets 5+ catches, he'll probably have 46.5 yards. I'm going to change it. Go 46.5 yards. But Jonnu Smith yards is the way to go. So that is the conclusion here. So we can walk back through each game. Before we do, though, if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe. Join the family. Looking at the leans in each game, the Bears, it's DJ Moore. The Lions, it's Jahmyr Gibbs. I'd say scrimmage yards. But I like David Montgomery, too. I do, assuming there's no limitations there. Cowboys, it's Rico Dowdle, and that might be my favorite one. Giants, it's Malik Neighbors. And again, if you guys aren't on Sleeper, get on it. Join with code LEADS. They'll give you the Malik Neighbors discount if you join today, Wednesday. And if you can't join today, Wednesday, you're seeing this on Thursday. They still have other discounts, other free picks for you. You'll get a free pick every day, but free picks for you. And then Miami, Green Bay. Green Bay is Jacobs scrimmage yards. A lot of rush production overall. And then fourth most receiving yards, 2 opposing running backs. And I think it's still Jonnu Smith. The only thing that worries me, like Tyreek Hill, he's running a lot from the slot. Receptions. Wow. We might have to change this up. I think I'm going to lean into Tyreek Hill too, 4.5 catches, because he'll be involved in the screen game. We'll take one more quick look at the screen game for the Dolphins and the Packers. He will be involved in the screen game, which is what I'm fascinated with. Is there any type of design percentages? Look, the Dolphins are throwing screens at the highest rate. That's the reality. Are the Packers getting screened? Because if the Packers are getting screened, we have to look at Tyreek Hill. Not really. But if the Dolphins are going to do what they want offensively, I think you go Tyreek Hill, five catches too. So I'd say Jonnu Smith. I'd say yards for Smith, but catches for Tyreek Hill. I think he'll be involved in the screen game. But that is the conclusion, guys. Thank you for coming for our full Thanksgiving breakdown. If you guys enjoyed this, again, make sure to leave a like on the video tomorrow, or depending on when you're seeing this, Thursday afternoon. There will be a breakdown for the Chiefs-Raiders game. There will be a Sunday night football breakdown and a Monday night football breakdown. Sunday night will come out Saturday. Monday night will come out Sunday afternoon. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for every single one of you guys. Good luck. God bless. See you soon.